of those. We move on now, and India has once again raised alarm over Pakistan's constant support for terror networks. This time, the concerns are directed to the International Monetary Fund. Indian Defence Minister Rajnath Singh has called on the IMF to reconsider its billion-dollar loan to Islamabad, claiming that a significant portion of the funds could be diverted to rebuild and sustain terror hideouts within Pakistan. Let's listen in to what he said.
निश्चित रूप से इंटरनेशनल मॉनेटरी फंड से आने वाले $1 बिलियन के बड़े हिस्से को टेरर इंफ्रास्ट्रक्चर को फंड करने में इस्तेमाल होगा, ऐसा मेरा मानना है। क्या यह इंटरनेशनल मॉनेटरी फंड IMF द्वारा, जो कि एक इंटरनेशनल ऑर्गेनाइजेशन है, उसके द्वारा इनडायरेक्ट फंडिंग इसे नहीं माना जाएगा? मैं दुनिया के लोगों के सामने यह सवाल रखना चाहता हूं।
Well, this comes after one of the deadliest flare-ups between the two nuclear-armed neighbours, sparked by a terror attack in Kashmir that India blames on Pakistan-based militants. Despite New Delhi's objections, the IMF has already approved $1 billion in assistance, with another $1.4 billion authorised under a climate resilience programme. This is raising fresh concerns in India about the transparency and end use of global financial support. India, which sits on the IMF Executive Board, has abstained from recent funding votes, citing what it calls Pakistan's poor track record and warning that any economic aid without accountability risks fueling terror under the guise of reconstruction. Well, joining us to discuss these latest comments from Rajnath Singh and the implications of that IMF loan is former diplomat Ambassador Anil Triganayat, who is a former diplomat. Thank you very much for being here with us. Let's look at these statements by Rajnath Singh, of course talking about the fact that this money could be used to fund terror. What is your opinion of them, firstly?
Well, the problem is that if you just simply look at it in the economic terms, Pakistan is probably the only state in the world that has got these fundings for about 25 times from the International Monetary Fund. It's always with a begging bowl going all around the world. So it has not done well on the economic front as well. Despite that, it has continued to, since 1958, receive the kind of bailouts from the IMF, which is generally governed by the Americans, mainly in that sense, of the Western countries to a great extent. And that was one of the main objections that India had put. On the other hand, for the last at least 3 decades or 4 decades, Pakistan has been indulging in the cross-border terrorism, which is its centerpiece of its foreign policy against India. And the world knows about it. And despite that, and despite the fact that we just had these heinous terrorist attacks on innocent civilians and tourists on the basis of their religion in Kashmir, is something that should have been taken into account. But while the things were going on, it is only at that particular time that the IMF decided to shell out that money. Now, what happens to that money now? And the Defence Minister Rajnath Singh is absolutely right. India's concern were also given on the board meeting as well. But now look at this. There were about 100 terrorists who were killed. And even one Masood Azhar's family, apparently including his terrorist brother, the 14 of them were killed. What has Pakistan government done? They have said that they are going to give 1 crore rupees each. Now, a country that is going through a terrible financial crisis, where everything is in short supply, is looking at sustaining and providing assistance and sustenance to terrorists and their families. Now, that gives you, if they give you 100 crores, from where is it going to come? That is something one needs to see. What kind of mechanisms does the IMF have really to look at that the money is not diverted? We have seen that the United States had given $400 million to Pakistan to maintain those F-16s that they had provided. And what for? For fighting against terror. Who in the world thinks that the F-16 will be used for fighting terrorism, especially in a state that breeds terrorism? So this is precisely the case. Now, if the world is blind and can't see it, especially those who matter in the IMF, then one can only keep on harping onto these deaf ears.
Yes, absolutely. Former diplomat Ambassador Trigonite. Let's look at the role of the IMF. I want to look and question why these loans have been given. Of course, we had this announcement as the tensions were ongoing. If due process was in place beforehand for these loans, how do you think that could have been reconsidered? And do you think it should have been reconsidered, given the action that India carried out against terrorism following the devastating Pahalgam terror attack?
Well, you know that Pakistan has been in the grey list 4 times of the FATF. Now, which also conducts independent investigations into their leakage. They have just recently, with great difficulty, came out, especially because China has been supporting them and so has the US wanted to. And they had the terrible problem economically in the country because of sheer economic management and politico-economic and security conundrum that they are facing in the country. So this is a combination of all the instability that prevails in the country. Nobody wants that country to go under, but at the same time, there should be the mechanisms that should look after, number one. Number two, look at the timing of the giving the loan. I mean, they could have deferred in the meeting. It is quite possible. Yeah, but they continue because immediately when these things started, you remember they went to China asking them for $1 billion. They go to Saudi Arabia, they go to Qatar and other countries asking for money because the country survives. On the other hand, the deep state in the country is really enjoying that money. Not the ordinary people of Pakistan. They are still suffering. They are in a miserable condition. So I think that there has to be some kind of I would say, analysis, an objective analysis, and the country should be, or the leadership, whichever is there, needs to be brought to some kind of an accountability. That is the problem. I'm not saying that we don't give the money or anything like that. IMF does have its own rules and regulations, but it hardly implies that if you are indulging in terror activities, which is forbidden under the law, which is not a civilized behavior, it still gets rewarded for it. And at the timing when they are directly implicit in the Pahalgam attacks. So that's what is our concern, India's concern is.
Absolutely. Ambassador Trigonite, thank you ever so much for joining us. We do move on to the Middle East now, and at least 143 Palestinians have been killed in a way